Hello and welcome back to another episode of Notion Bonsai. And today we're going to be working on a Corylopsis Pauciflora, also known as the Buttercup Witch Hazel or the Winter Hazel. Alright, so this is the tree that we're going to be working on today, and being a deciduous tree, it has already lost its leaves for the winter, and I can already see on the tree, if I just look close, it's already got the flower buds that it has, where it will produce beautiful small yellow flowers in late winter, early spring. And since this is a tree that came from a garden centre, it hasn't had any bonsai treatment whatsoever to it. So I'm going to start by revealing the bottom of the trunk here to see if I can find some sort of root base or Nebari. And the tools that I'm going to be using today are a chopstick, some twig cutters or Satsuki shears, wire cutters, some gin pliers, concave branch cutters or hybrid cutters, a bent fork, and finally these cheap garden scissors. Now by no means do you need all of these tools. This video is also for beginners to bonsai, and you could probably get by with a pair of good sharp scissors. A bent fork is simply a bent fork, and a chopstick. So if we're going to look for a Nebari to this tree or a root flare, we're going to need to dig down a little bit on the surface. And I'm going to be removing some of the topsoil here and sort of take it down about an inch. So before I do that, I'm just going to take these cheaper scissors and cut the plastic of the pot down a little. And now we can take the chopstick and just sort of dig away at the trunk. When I drag the chopstick like this, I'm always working away from the trunk. And it's totally fine for the tree at this time of year to remove this little piece of soil at the top. It's got lots of roots down here that will help it through the winter. And by no means am I repotting this tree today. The best time to repot hazel is spring. Just digging down and looking to see where the roots begin. And you can also take the bent fork and rake it very gently. You don't want to tear through the roots. You just want to loosen the soil. Now the reason why that I'm digging down to find the Nebari, by seeing the root flare, that helps me determine where the front of the bonsai is. And every bonsai will have a front or a preferred angle. And of course there's other features to the tree that determine the front also. One would be the trunk line, branch structure, or if the tree has a certain feature that you'd like to show off. And again, there isn't one front to a bonsai. Some trees could have many possible fronts, and it's just up to you in which way you think it looks best. And you may need to take the tree down quite a bit to get to the Nebari that we're looking for, as garden centres and commercial growers tend to plant the tree deeper than it needs to be. And it's quite okay to come along and prune off these roots, preferably with a sharp pair of scissors, as sharp scissors will make cleaner cuts, and cleaner cuts means the tree can heal better. Alright, so now I'm quite happy with how much of the trunk that I've revealed here. It's going to help me in making the decision of choosing the front. And now when you choose the front of a bonsai, you don't want to simply look at it sort of in the angle that it's in the pot and rotate it like this as if it's on a turntable. Remember that you also have the option of tilting your tree. So this could be a possible planting angle where the lip of the pot's going to be this way, could be this way. And remember, you also can tilt it forwards and backwards. So take the tree, lift it, turn it around to figure out which will be your front. But there's just one glaring problem that I dislike with this tree. I'd like this tree to become a single trunk tree, and as the tree comes up here, it splits like a Y. Now I guess you could make this work, but generally with twin trunk bonsais, the split emanates from the very base of the tree. Some people could like this, but personally, I'm not a big fan of how this splits here. Now one option could be to air layer the tree right here at the very bottom of that split, and then develop all of this above to be your twin trunk bonsai. And now another option, which I think is the more preferable option for now, is to remove one of these branches so that the tree tapers from thick to thinner. And remember, in bonsai you sort of want the eye to be able to easily follow the trunk up. And if there's a split in the trunk, it sort of ruins that flow. It sort of makes the viewer think, where am I going? Am I going this way with my eyes or this way? Yeah, I'm definitely going to remove one of these. Now when considering which one to remove, I'm thinking taper. If I remove this one, the tree will taper well. It goes from thick to thinner. But I'm also losing quite a lot of branches here, which I could use to wire. But I think by keeping this one, it's thinking too short term. I don't want an instant bonsai. I like a tree that has good taper. So I'm going to cut off the thicker of the two branches and just start by shortening it. It's always good to just shorten the branch before you really come in and do fine detail work. I've removed quite a lot here. All right, so if I follow this up with my eye, it still sort of has a little bit sticking out there. So I'm going to come in again, and instead of having the branch cutters like this, I'm going to turn them this way so that I can really control how I want the cut to look. Just like that. I could come in again, just fine tune it. Now with the other tool, the concave cutters, this really takes a bite out of the tree. I don't want to go too deep with this. All right, so the reason why we use a concave cutter like this is that when the tree heals over here, and if it's cut concave, it will roll over and heal flush with the trunk, and that's what we want. And I think already the tree is looking pretty good, and this is how much we have removed. It's quite a lot. So now we're just going to come in with some cut putty here. I'm just going to push this over the wound. Might be a little bit too much. And when you push it on the wound, you want to make sure that your finger's wet. That'll just prevent it sticking to your finger. All right, I'm pretty happy with this. So on a side note, I want to show you how to take a cutting from a Buttercup Witch Hazel. You want to take cuttings from semi-hardwood cuttings. So this little shoot here in the side of this branch, if you pull it down like that, that's what's known as a heel cutting. You can just remove the lower branches on this and take off the end of the heel like that. Dip it in some hormone rooting powder and it should root. You can also take a nodal cutting in the same way. So as you can see here, there's buds on this branch. If you cut it just below a bud and take off the bottom bud, dip it in some hormone rooting powder, it should root. Now I would just like to say that this Winter Hazel can be a little difficult to root from cutting, and I would recommend growing it from seed if you wish to get sort of thin shoots like this, as seeds have a lot higher success rate with hazels. Now that this thicker branch is gone, we can actually see more of the trunk and more of where we would like the front to be. And because we made this cut here, it's not quite pleasing to see a big nasty scar on a trunk. So I think for the tree to look its best, I could put that scar to the back of the tree and have this as the front, and it also gives you a nice movement from here up. Now I know I don't want the tree to have the same thickness. You see this part of the trunk here, it's quite straight. Now hazels are quite flexible, as you can see here. You could put a bit of wire on this and maybe give it a little bit more movement. Oh yes, I would also like to mention that pruning hazel before they have flowered means you probably won't get flowers for the following year. It's best to prune these just after the tree has flowered, but I'm thinking long term with this tree, so I'm not really worried about keeping the flowers next season or this season. I think I'm going to do something rather drastic with this tree, which is to take it to the lowest branch and allow that to become the new apex and leader of the tree, which means the tree will look a lot worse before it looks better. I could also cut it here, I could cut it here, I could even take it as far down as this lower branch here and cut it there, but I think I already like this movement that I've created by cutting this branch off, so it goes from thick to thinner and then to really thin, and that will grow on then and become the new leader. I'm going to first take the tree to here and see what that looks like. Okay, doesn't look too bad. I'd like to take it down even further and get a nice tight movement there. I'm a lot happier with this. Yeah, it looks great from this angle. If I just point this up, this will become the new leader of the tree. Just want to get this cut a little bit more flush. Just going to cover that with a little bit more cut putty. So what I'm doing with this tree is very much the clip and grow method, and I'm sacrificing the tree looking nice now for taper in the future, where the tree will probably look even better. If you're wondering about how often you should repot, I'd recommend repotting witch hazel like this maybe every 2 years, 3 years, depending on how pot bound it becomes in a pot or a bonsai pot. I'm going to keep this lower branch here, possibly as a sacrificial branch to thicken the trunk in the future. I'm just going to put a little bit of thin wire up the trunk now. So this is 1mm wire, and a good way to test if the wire is going to hold the branch that you wish to bend is to push the wire against the branch in the direction you want to bend it, and see how the wire just bends and the branch doesn't move at all. That's a sign that the wire is too thin for the branch. So I'm going to move it up to 2mm wire. So I'm just going to measure I'm going to stab it into the soil and work around the trunk. Now it's important to be extremely delicate here, as if you break this branch, the tree will no longer have a leader. So I'm going to be very careful in what I do here. I'm just going to take the branch and bend it up. Now I'm happy with where this is. I'm just going to take these gin pliers, curl it around. And that looks pretty good. And now my future plan with this tree is to just let the top of it elongate, grow, let the tree get healthy. And eventually these cuts that we have made here and here, they'll heal over and become almost invisible. There's just one thing I'd like to do here. I'm just gonna take a little bit of wire, make a loop, and just stab it into the soil like this. That'll just hold the branch down. In spring we can come back and then give this tree a repot. And when this tree flowers, it could be a good idea to deadhead the flowers on the tree so that it doesn't produce fruit and take energy from the tree. And this will encourage new growth and in turn new branches. And finally, in terms of pests and diseases, hazel doesn't really tend to get many pests or diseases, although it can get chlorosis in the leaves. And that's when the tree can't produce enough chlorophyll in the leaves. And with the Buttercup Witch Hazel like this one, that's normally down to the soil being too alkaline. And because it's too alkaline, the tree then cannot take up the sufficient nutrients up to the leaves. So it's good to have a Buttercup Witch Hazel like this in a more acidic type soil. But yeah, that's the work that we have done to the tree. And there you guys have it. I think this video was a good lesson on how sometimes a bonsai tree can look a lot worse before it looks a lot better. You don't always have to have like an instant tree that looks great from the get-go. I'm really looking forward to see how this tree will develop over the next couple of years. Please let me know in the comments what you think of my approach to this tree. If you have any tips or any feedback, I'm always open to new ideas. But on that, thank you so very much for watching.